like to call the meeting to order. If you'd stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone who's watching from home. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Trustee DeVore.
Present.
Trustee Gatt.
Present.
Trustee Kazam.
Present.
Trustee Marfil.
Present.
Trustee Wigginton.
Present.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Present.
All right, welcome again everyone. Everyone from the board is here this evening, either in person or remotely. We would be at approval of the meeting minutes from September 7th, 2021. I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
And a second. Any questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, we'd be at correspondence.
I have a note here from the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council. It reads as follows. Mayor Phelan, on behalf of the GPEDC, thank you for continued and increased support of our organization and the regional economy. It is great to have such outstanding partners like the village, not to mention good friends like you. Thanks for all you do, Chris Setti.
Anything else? That it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. We'd be at comments from the audience. If anyone would like to address the board, please come forward to the podium, and if you would give your name and address and try and keep your remarks under 5 minutes.
Good evening.
Hi, sir.
My name is Michael Ketter. I live at 5187 North Prospect Road here in the Heights. Is there anything else I need to give you?
No, that's great. Go right ahead.
Thank you. My reason for attending the village board meeting tonight is the excessive speeds that are being posted or actually being driven here on North Prospect, specifically between Grandview Drive and the western limits or the north limits of the village. These normally occur, and it's in both directions. It doesn't make any difference what the speeders want to do. The excessive speeds along the Prospect occur between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m., 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and sometimes later. That's during weekdays. On the weekends, it's from 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. easily. All different types of vehicles. I've seen commercial vehicles, larger commercial vehicles and such. Motorcycles, and it's not the Harley Davidsons I have a problem with. It's the crotch rockets, and it has been of late. One weekend I counted at least 10 vehicles come up behind 2 other cars, pull a wheelie, go across the double yellow lines right there at Belvedere, Bellevue, whichever one it is. And if a person was making a left turn, they would not have seen those motorcycles across the double yellow lines. And it probably would have been a fatality because most of them aren't wearing their helmets. Okay, that's their choice. The other thing is the passing on the double yellow lines. When there's no mail or garbage being done, is there a reason to do it? Shouldn't be. They're solid double yellow lines, state law. Most of this occurs between 6 p.m. on weekdays. It happens between 6 and 10 p.m. And on weekends, I've seen it all hours. And the thing that I wanted to address is the big rig and commercial vehicles using North Prospect to cut through to Knoxville. I've seen an increase. I hate to say it, but Sherman's is one of the big violators. There used to be a sign right here at Glen going this direction towards the north part or the western part of Prospect, and it was posted no trucks over 5 ton, if I'm correct on the weight. Why did it disappear? Where did it go, and what was the reasoning to drop it? The reason being is now you've just introduced a commercial, and I've seen Budweiser. I've actually called up Budweiser to complain about their drivers using it as a thoroughfare. We know they're not going down the hill Because if they were going down the hill, they'd catch their landing gear and get stuck, just as they would come up. Some of the vehicles are in excess of 53 feet. I've seen federal loads that come through here. I understand that there are some that are homes, or going to homes to drop off stuff, but I've seen actually the deliveries that come in that shouldn't even come through here. I followed them. I've actually followed the trucks all the way to Knoxville. They're using it as a thoroughfare. And that can't be any good for down in the village itself proper, because now all of a sudden you've got these narrow roadways because of the seeding, and now you're starting to cause a congestion. And that congestion can cause more time for emergency vehicles to get through. Pretty simple. Excuse me. This might run a little bit over, but
That's all right, go ahead.
I have several questions for whoever is in charge of the roads besides the board itself. When was the last traffic survey conducted on Prospect to know what the traffic counts are compared to now? I think they've increased. I mean, I've been living there since 2013, and I've seen an increase in the traffic and the noise that comes up through here.
You want us to take a shot at that? Your question? I think the question on the traffic count probably was done when we did the corridor study. Would that be correct?
The what study?
We did a corridor study for Prospect. Was that several years ago, Dustin?
Yeah, that was quite a while ago.
Okay. Under federal guidelines and also court rulings, they should be done every 5, 7, or 10 years to determine if there's a major change. And that can be the roadway itself, or it can be the traffic patterns itself. But it should be conducted because that's the only way you can certify that roadway as being an 85th percentile, which is also under federal guidelines, to use radar or LiDAR legally. Now, I know this for a fact, okay? The other thing is, too, is that I understand that the roadways themselves, all throughout, the heights have changed as far as traffic patterns, but more so because of what happened with the bridges and the construction of the bridges. And now you get a big rig operator that says, my GPS says I can go this way. If they don't see the sign here, which is gone, they're going to continue through into a residential neighborhood. That is considered a residential neighborhood by federal guidelines as to homes per square mile. And that would fall into that particular one. It's an arterial roadway as it deemed right now. I understand that the fact that there might not be enough officers, might not be enough money in the budgets, might not be enough money to put traffic calming in. No stop signs are needed, but traffic calming measures can be done. If you don't have the money to do that, then when was the last person that submitted a grant to either state or federal to provide the funds for an additional officer, additional public works person that can go ahead and put those measurements in? When was the last time that was conducted?
This department has had grants, and they have filled those grants. When they expired, we still retain those officers. We did not cut them loose. As you know, let me finish, because as you know, those grants run out. We retain those officers, and this administration and board have also added officers more, and I've been here 27 years, more than any other administration. So
Right.
To answer your question, how many grants, and those grants are no longer available as far as personnel grants. The last grant we received was the last grant they offered. But again, once it expired, we didn't cut the officer loose, we retained him, and that's a testament to this administration. So to
Right.
answer that question, and going back to your mandate on the study on the roads, the Tri-County Regional Planning helps us with that. We are a partner with them, and they handle all of that for us. So I didn't get a chance to interrupt you before, but that's my answer on the mandate.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. The parts of the grant, though, if you don't look for them and seek them, there's no way you can see whether or not you can fulfill them. There's a lot of them that you can go ahead and apply for, whether it be DUI enforcement, drunk driving enforcement, in coordination with speeding, excessive speeding, seatbelt violations, cell phone violations, which we see every day that some get enforced and some don't because they're busy or whatever. And I'm not saying, Chief, that you don't have the people or the quality of workforce. I'm just saying that where it comes an even balance, and I'm trying to help by saying, I have written grants before for a very large agency, and I would be willing to volunteer my own personal time to assist in trying to find resolutions to this. And that's also writing a grant, and that would be approval of the board and you.
Well, I appreciate your support, and we do have officers internally that handle that for us and also look for grants, including myself. As far as the IDOT grants for traffic, we've participated in all the IDOT grants when they do any type of roadblock or traffic or safety check from Galena Road to Prospect to Ward Drive. We participate in all of that, but as you know, they have cut way back on that, on how often they do it. But we are a player, and we continue to participate in any way we can. But you're exactly right. As far as traffic is very important to us. It is. We probably write more tickets in Peoria County than anybody. We're getting close to Peoria because some of their cutbacks, but we write more tickets than anybody in Peoria County. We're at least in the top 2.
Right.
And I know that because we get those stats from the state every month. But the other thing is too, if we were a rural community, I guess we could really concentrate. I could send all 15 of my officers to concentrate on traffic. I could, but unfortunately we're not. We're surrounded by Peoria. Our call load is, for a small agency like ours, our guys do a great job of keeping the element out of Peoria Heights. And we're surrounded by a larger city. So our call load is probably triple, quadruple of a department like Bartonville, Chillicothe. That's why we have so many officers on the street. And we have more officers per shift than anybody in the Tri-County area. It's still not enough to cover all the cut-through traffic, and I'm not disputing anything you're saying, sir. I know firsthand, and it's things that you probably don't know about, that we chased those motorcycles the other night all the way across the bridge into Woodford County and caught them both. We caught two cars drag racing down Prospect at 11 o'clock at night, chased them across the river. I know it's there, and I know it happens, but as you know, the opportunity for us being at the right place at the right time, there are 2 examples that we were, but a majority of time, we're not. We're doing other things. We have a high call load. We have other things. Our officers handle all code enforcement during the day. So there's a lot of multitasking going on. I do think, and I'm sure we'll talk about it pretty soon regarding some of the board's options and what they want to see that we could do for traffic calming. But as far as enforcement, the traffic, the speed trailer we put out records a lot of things. It records average speed, it records traffic count. It's not just a decoy that we throw out there to hope that people slow down. It's actually collecting data that we can really use to maybe add a stop sign or add something else. And I appreciate, we have a lot of support in the community, and I know that you're here to support us, I do, and I don't want you to take my comments wrong, because I'm not upset about it, I'm not.
Right.
But I do think that some of the things you touched on, you wouldn't know that because we don't advertise that stuff internally. We're all over grants when it comes to personnel, we're all over grants when it comes to participating with IDOT. This department is very proactive in that stuff, and I do appreciate you offering your assistance, but we do have people to handle that, so.
Is there any way you can look at some of the smaller stuff, like certain code enforcements that doesn't require an actual law enforcement officer? It would be handled by a code person. What about a volunteer program that can come out and do some stuff?
Our program, our code enforcement program was civilian at one time. And then approximately 15 years ago, when I decided to recommend that it go under the police umbrella, our compliance rate went from 30% compliance into the 90s in the first year. And I don't know if that's just because the police officer's handling it. I don't know if it's just they didn't take the civilian seriously. But I have thought about that, if that would free up some of the officers. But unfortunately, I cannot afford for that compliance rate to drop out of the 90s. It's not. It's hard to keep up with ordinance right now, and I think anybody that lives in the Heights knows that ordinance is a top priority as well. We garbage, abandoned vehicles, high grass, high weeds, it's the old broken windows theory, as you know.
Right.
So that's very important to this village administration. So I don't feel rolling that back to a civilian role will do this community any good, even though it is a larger tax on the police department. And just briefly how that's structured, we broke the village up into zones, and every officer is assigned a zone. So when they're not taking calls, writing speeding tickets, they're also covering their zone and the ordinance zone. It's worked very well for us, because to go from 30 to 90% compliance in the first year is unbelievable. But I guess I will chalk that up to just being handled by the police department, and maybe it's just an authority or respect issue that it's being complied with. I don't know. But as far as rolling it back to civilian, I just don't see this community accepting that. I know that the bar is high now, and I don't think we need to take any steps back on that issue.
Okay. What kind of traffic measures are you looking at for the traffic calming that you're trying to look at? One of the things I suggest that might stop part of the motorcycles coming across the double yellow lines, not necessarily the cars, but the agency where I worked at, I actually did a state route, and we had 25 fatalities on that particular route. We helped design it. We put rumble strips on the sides so people couldn't pass on the shoulders or whatever. But we cut a rumble strip. We made the double yellow lines like this, put delineators, which you don't need to do, but if you wanted to, you could put yellow delineators buried so they can see it at night or in the rain. And then cutouts. And when I say cutouts, they're about this deep, and it makes the motorcycle, it doesn't make them lose control, but it sure wakes them up. The other thing, too, is it kept drunk drivers or somebody was falling asleep in that particular area to wake up. That might be one of the things you might want to look at, or choking measures you can do to choke it down and make it thinner. It's the only thing I could come up with. I'm available I did all the planning with engineers, traffic engineers, in a large state, so.
Well, I want to thank you for being here tonight. We're going to get into a discussion in just a few minutes. We take this seriously. We understand there's a whole lot of cut-through traffic in Peoria Heights. It's not just on Prospect. It's also on Glen. It's on Illinois. It's on Monroe. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to thank you for taking the time to be here tonight, and we're going to try and address this.
Thank you very much
Best
for
we
your
can.
time.
Just one side note, though, and you can comment on this too. We get a whole lot of complaints on Galena Road, and as many of you may know, we've got a grant in to redo Galena Road, but we could have an officer down there all day long, writing tickets all day long, and sometimes we do, and it just doesn't seem to make a difference. It's a behavior of people that just aren't respecting the community that they're
Right. You have to change their behavior on how they're going to go ahead and drive.
But, I for one, at least on Prospect and in the neighborhoods, doing everything we can to avoid cut-through traffic.
What about the sign? Nothing was addressed about the sign that I was talking about with the 5-ton. Was there a reason why it was taken down?
Where was that?
It was located right here on the south edge or the eastern edge, right there. It was right up above the stoplights at Big Rig height, and it says no trucks over 5 tons, and then short.
4 tons.
Was it 4 tons? Thank you. I knew I was close. So it would eliminate, because the thing is that those trucks, when they're loaded coming through there, they're going to tear up the roadways. It's not going to take long if they keep using it, especially how much liquid form that Budweiser goes through. And I know they service down here, but they still should come down to a roadway that's prepared to take it, which is Glen. And that's the way it always used to be. It's not a truck route. This used to be the cutoff right here. It used to be a left turn here, and you went down to Knoxville, and you went to your businesses.
Yeah, no, I could be wrong, but Mike or Dave, I think the state does have a little bit of say-so in that because it's a connection between 2 state highways.
This used to be a state route all the way out.
I understand that.
Knoxville,
right.
And they gave it to us, and then we had to get for legal issues with the engineers and stuff and make sure that, like the mayor said.
Right. Maybe it's something you can.
Wait, I can check into it. That's fine.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the discussion a little bit.
Sure.
It's something we might want to, as everyone knows, the city of Peoria has the northern end of Prospect. It's something we might want to talk with them about to see if there's a mutual solution we can come up with.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time. I
Thanks for
appreciate
being
it.
here. All right, we're still at public comment. If anyone else would like to address the board, please come forward. Yes, sir, please come up. Give us your name.
Thank you. My name's Terry Simpkins. I live in 1212 Scioto. And my concerns are, I've been here for 69 years, my entire life. So anyway, I've got a concern about the noise ordinance that you guys are going to discuss tonight. And I know that there's been some stipulations that have been made to the ordinance, you know, outside of the way it's written as an ordinance right now at 10 o'clock. Some comments were made to me that there was some kind of a deal or whatever worked out with some businesses for Friday, Saturday. If there was any way that it could be done, I would like to see it not changed to the 10 from 10 to 11 o'clock, but the noise is pretty bad. I'm about a block and a half away, to the point where sitting in my living room, I got to uncomfortably turn up the television just to hear it. I mean, it's the bass and the drums that are really just. In my house, I live in an older home. My walls are plaster. You know, I mean, I'm not going to be able to get much more insulation than that, but I did look into a new bay window to see about it. Getting a triple pane, some sound barrier thing, 10 grand. I'm not going to do, I can't do that.
Sir, when you say noise, you mean music? Is that?
Music, yes. I'm sorry, for music from the bars. I'll just leave it the bars. The other issue that I have, there's a neighbor here that lives next door to me that can back me up on this also, is even though they're playing until 11 o'clock, supposedly, per agreement that was made, they don't end at 11 o'clock. You know, this goes on till at least 11:30 and 12 o'clock. A lot of times it's 12 o'clock or 10 minutes to 12. And there's no indication to me that they even thought about stopping at 11. You know, they hire the band. Almost every band that plays for 3 hours. They don't start them until 8:30. They take a break at like 10 minutes to 10. As soon as they get back from break, a little bit after 10, the volume goes up even higher, and they play till at least 11:30, if not later than that. I just don't see any way I can get around this, because the way that it's listed, from my understanding, is that I have to complain. Well, if I made a complaint at 11 o'clock, which is when they, I guess, are supposed to quit, even though I say it's 10, Peoria, they won't get a car there in time. I'm 500 foot away from the police station. I had a minor car accident, my fault, backed out of my driveway and into a neighbor's car. Ended up calling the police immediately. It took them 45 minutes to get there. I'm 500 foot away. And it wasn't the car's fault. I seen the Heights police pull into the station, pull out of the station, go the other way. They didn't get dispatched. It took me that long to get a car dispatched 500 feet away from their front door. So doing this, and I'm not saying anything wrong, I'm a firm believer in the Heights police. I mean, I fly a thin blue line flag and the whole ball of wax, but the thing of it is that they would be done playing by the time they get there. If I called them at 11 o'clock, 10 to 12, they're done. So the officer can't do anything. There's nothing he can do. They're done playing. But they got an extra 45 minutes or late night for me. So I just wanted to share these issues that I'm having along with my neighbors, and just to see if there's something that could be discussed or brought up about this.
Mr. Simpkins, let me address, first of all, the lag in dispatch time.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And, there have been many, as you know, we contract out with Peoria for dispatch service
Yeah.
because of the state mandate. So we lost our dispatch center. So that has been a work in progress because when we did have our own dispatch center, of course, you were getting, the response time was immediate. But sometimes when they get caught up on call loads, not that it's an excuse, but we continue to field these complaints to the community. They've starting to thin out lately, so I'm not sure how long ago this happened, but I'll tell you, if that does happen again, I would appreciate if you to reach out to me. I can address that. We are contractual with Peoria, and we have the correct people to contact to correct it, so that is unacceptable as far as response time. So I can give you my card afterwards, and please let me know if that happens again.
Okay.
But also going to the noise ordinance part of this, and I don't want to get too much into it because we're going to have a discussion pretty
Right.
soon, and I'll have a few things to say there. But in the future, if you do have any issues with response time, I would really like to know that. That's something we need to know.
Okay,
So-
it just seems like we're put on the back burner up here in the Heights with Peoria District.
Well, we were at first, and it was to change that culture. They finally started getting through that we were getting a lot better service. Now, operationally, it's been a great move for us. It really has. But the downside of it has been the public service side, and that's when we have people call in, they hold calls. Even though they don't think it's very important in the city of Peoria, it is very important to us. And I'm not saying I understand what they're going through, and I'm glad we don't have shootings every night like they do. But there are some things here in the village that we knew this going in on the mandate. Customer service is so important to us, and the residents, this is what they expect. They expect when they call to have a car in front of their house in a timely manner. So just reach out to me in the future if you have those issues, and I'll give you my card when we're done, okay?
I certainly will.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
afraid that I'm not going to get to say anything after this, so just one more quick thing, that with this going past the time all the time, I would like to interject some kind of suggestion of maybe some kind of a fine system for, for them going over, whatever it might be.
We do have a fine system, and there have been.
We've written a ticket recently, haven't
Yeah,
we?
there have been bar owners that have been issued citations, and I can think 3 just off the top of my head in the last couple months.
Okay.
So those have been issued, but I'm not saying we catch every band that goes over, and it depends, especially on a Friday and Saturday night when our call load's a little higher, and the guys are busy. I'm not saying they can't get back to check on it.
Right.
But we will make every effort to make sure that whatever this board decides tonight, that those times are checked. And I also will be on the proactive side. I'll reach out to the bar owners and let them know they need to do a better job on their end then if they're going way past, especially almost an hour.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, their scheduling of their band and everything, it's deliberate, and it's every night, and it's posted on Facebook.
Well, whatever we decide tonight, I will make sure that they understand what it is and what we expect out of them, but we do have a fine structure in place.
Okay, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Who else? Anyone else? Welcome.
Yeah, I'm Chauncey Oatkin. I live at 1220 East Scioto here in the Heights. I moved here in '98, so I've been in the Heights for going on 23 years. With the noise, it's a little concerning to me. I'm in my front room. I don't have my windows open. The door's shut. The windows are shut. I live in a brick home, and my windows are just rattling. And there's no reason that it needs to be that loud. And where I work, I'm the general manager for AMC of 3 locations here in town. I could do a decibel reading and tell you what it is from my house. It's a little concerning, and I've called up to the village a couple times, and then I've called the police. And I know one particular night it went till 12:30, and I was mad because if I have to get up and work, you're not going to go to sleep before they're done playing. And my concern is if you guys make it 11 o'clock. Is it going to be 1 o'clock or is it going to be 2 o'clock? And who's going to actually enforce that that's being done? Because when I call, every time I've called, it's 15 minutes when they get done when an officer shows up to my house. So I'm a little irritated that they're not taking we live on the other side of Prospect, not on this side of Prospect, and our needs and our concerns aren't being heard. So I just want to make sure when I leave today that you take that I'm heard and you take that into consideration. because I feel like that you're not hearing us as far as this is being proposed, and the bar owners don't care about what we're doing, and that we live here in this community. Yeah, you guys are making a lot of tax revenue off of that alcohol that's being sold up there, but we live in the community, and we are the community. So I just want to make sure that you understand, I've been here that long, and I grew up in Peoria and lived in Peoria, and that's why one reason I wanted to move to the Heights, because I didn't want to live in Peoria. So just going forward, what is the actual ordinance today? What is it? If Chief Sutton, if you can tell me what the ordinance says today.
I will get into that once we get into that agenda item, explain backstory on the current ordinance and where we stand and why we are enforcing it at 11. I will get into that when it comes to the agenda item.
Okay, well, the other thing too is if, along with fines, if they could have a stair-step process with the fines, so the bar owner's like, oh, it's not a big deal.
The fine structure is already structured that way, where there is a fine structure that's not a specific amount. If they're found in non-compliance 1 or 2 times, it's higher fine. So that's already in place, and that happens when they go to court, and that'll be up to our attorney when they take it to adjudication.
Now, what about the actual individual bands? Do they get fined, or just the bar?
It's the bar. It's the owner. It's the whatever establishment it's at. It's not the actual band.
Well, I think if they actually had a fine, they might actually not perform because they're going to lose revenue by doing that, and not. They need to. The bar owner needs to have a contract they sign that says you cannot play past this time, and if you do, you're going to be fined, and they've got to pay the fine.
Well, the bar controls that, so that's who we will be fining is the bar owner. It's up to them to schedule it. It's up to them to police it, and they will be the ones receiving the fine.
Okay. Well, if you guys pass this and it's 11, I personally am going to make it my mission with all the neighbors. And we're going to be picketing up there. I'm going to make it my mission. I'll get a permit or whatever I need to do. But if you don't care about us and you show that through the vote tonight, there'll be some things I'm going to personally do to get the people that live in the neighborhoods around here actively involved, because it's not okay. That's all I have to say.
All right, anyone else? Okay, comments going once, twice. Comments from the audience are closed. We get right into old business. Any old business come before the board?
Mr. Mayor, there's one thing that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. So at the last meeting, I discussed about the parking of vehicles and RVs and things like that on the front yard. After a very close inspection of our current ordinances, we already have an ordinance that says you cannot park an RV or a water vehicle, boat, jet ski, Sea-Doo, whatever, in your front yard. So it sounds like we don't need to make a new ordinance to address that because we already have one on the book. So currently there should be no recreational vehicles, RVs, Sea-Doos, jet skis, boats in people's front yards.
Okay, thank you. Any other old business? We get right into new business. Back to you, Trustee Wigginton. First, it's a discussion of speeding in neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and right on cue. And I appreciate Mr. Keller coming out this evening and talking a little bit about his concerns on Prospect. It's my understanding that it's not just Mr. Keller and it's not just Prospect that is experiencing some speeding in the village. Mr. Keller also brought up some other issues, the passing in the double lines, seatbelt violations, DUIs, and motorcycles doing some wheelies, etc. And I know that a lot of the trustees have some opinions on that, and I'm just a facilitator, I think, for this discussion. So I'll step back and let anyone else want to discuss.
I'll go. Thanks, Mayor. I'll start this out by thanking you for placing this item on the agenda tonight, and also thank Police Chief Sutton for his attention to the issue of speeding. The police department does a great job at patrolling and enforcing our existing speed limits. As I understand it, Peoria Heights is the second highest ticket issuer in Peoria County. Thank you. The people of Peoria Heights, thank you, and the police department for their attention to this issue and keeping our city safe. There are various speed limits, residential speed limits in the village of Peoria Heights. I've spoke on this matter many times, but realistically, there should be only one. I ask this board tonight to join me in calling for a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in all residential zones. There is no need to exceed 20 miles an hour on our narrow, mostly sidewalk-less, dense residential streets. AAA and other studies have shown that when hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles an hour, 9 out of 10 people will survive. I have this little diagram if anyone wants to see it. I'll pass it around. At 30 miles an hour, 5 out of 10 survive. At 40 miles an hour, only 1 out of 10 survive. In addition to the change in the speed limits, motorists should know when they're entering a residential neighborhood with an attention-grabbing sign. When someone cuts through into the Peoria Heights, they should know that they're entering a residential speed limit zone. I do have a few examples of different looking speed limit signs that really grab your attention as you enter a zone. I've given these out before, but I'll do it again. There are many options, some more economical than others, but I really think we need to upgrade our speed limit signs in our neighborhoods so that motorists, as we know, when they cut through the village of Peoria Heights, they should know that we take the safety in our neighborhoods seriously. They should know they're entering a residential zone. I know there is more to this issue than just the posted speed limit, but I firmly believe as a community, we need to set that safety standard of what we find acceptable in our neighborhoods. And I hope my fellow board members will join me in lowering the speed limit, the residential speed limit in the village of Peoria Heights.
I'll go next if possible. I want to take a second and talk about the enforcement. And I will say this topic is close to my heart right now because my youngest child is going through driver's ed and has his permit. And the amount of hours I've spent talking to him about speeding is unbelievable. But in regards to enforcement, I feel like there's several ways to enforce this. Some are more expensive than others. Most of that burden comes upon the village, but there is, I believe, something that the residents of the Heights can do to help enforce, and that is getting information on vehicles that they see speeding, in particular license plate numbers, description of vehicles, description of drivers. As the chief said, the chances of an officer actually seeing a speeder, naturally, if you're speeding and you see a police officer, you're going to slow down. But the chances of the officer getting there and seeing the speeder in action is very rare and is not going to happen very often. And as we also know, by tonight, if you call into the dispatcher, chances are they're not going to see it either. So if the residents can assist our police officers by getting license plate numbers, if possible, safely, getting description of vehicles, getting description of drivers, that would go a long way in helping the enforcement as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I just want to make a few comments. Thank you, Trustee Weisenberg, for bringing this up as well. And I do believe that some continuity in our speed limits in residential areas is really critical and I think necessary. 20 miles an hour seems a little bit low to me, but 25 I think is palatable. Also signage, and I also have noticed that we have some issues with corners in Peoria Heights. A lot of it is a low visibility situation with cars being able to be parked too close to an intersection or corner, and when people are coming around a turn, you don't see pedestrians or children or other cars very easily. So I'd like to bring that up.
I thank Trustee Weisenberg for bringing this to my attention too. I was driving my daughter home from school, or actually to school, the other day, and I thought I was in a residential neighborhood, and I think the people that live on that street actually think they are in a residential neighborhood too. But the speed limit was 30 miles per hour, and it was right along the school that they live, or they walk out on. They have, when they let out, they have a traffic stop person and stops the traffic, but it's my little kindergartner walking around out there. So I think it definitely would need to be discussed, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. I think it's the defining what a residential neighborhood is important, and that will be, I think, the key to this, especially at a 20 mile an hour. We have a lot of people who, I know we have residents that live right off of Galena, and if we have to carefully define what we call a residential neighborhood before making a sweeping 20 mile an hour speed limit. I know that on Galena Road, I have seen people going extremely fast, and like you said, Chief Sutton, we could write tickets there all day, and it doesn't seem to, make an impact. But maybe a lower speed limit would. But I think having a police officer down there writing tickets, as has been done, is a pretty good step. But so I think it's really defining what a residential neighborhood would be, where we would place this, whether it be, 20, 25. But yeah, I agree, calling it to my attention and was very helpful. So thank you, Trustee Weisenberg, for bringing it to my attention.
I don't think anyone would
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah, then we'll come back to you. Go ahead.
I also think that we need to take into consideration, we have some of these roads that are extremely long, like Monroe and Boulevard, Atlantic. A lot of these streets are long, and they don't always have a lot of stop signs on them. So I think taking some of those intersections and making them all stop signs would slow down the traffic that's cutting through, which I think is causing some havoc as well. I know a lot on Atlantic, there's a lot of yield signs that I watch people just blow right through, where if they were stop signs, I think maybe they'd be taken a little more seriously.
Well, I know on Atlantic, because I used to live down there, you go up Atlantic all the way up to Monroe, every corner has a stop sign. Before, Cox didn't have it, which was right there in my area, and I managed to get a stop sign put there, making a four-way stop. But it's all the way up to Lake Street.
Yeah, but the cross streets have yield signs. They don't have stop signs. So there might be stop signs on
okay,
Atlantic.
you said this Atlantic. You didn't. But I made a four-way stop there at Cox and Atlantic, and you go up to Hazard. There's a four-way stop. I know Hines. It's just on Atlantic. There's no yield sign at all or stop sign, but.
Well, and on Monroe, you have one stop sign between Ward Drive and Lake Street, and their traffic is very fast down that street. And there's a school there, plus a lot of people that live there, with children. Like, I think that needs to be addressed as well.
Anything else, Trustee Gett?
No, well, just that, like I said, I used to live down there, and we used to sit in our backyard, and we'd listen to the motorcycles fly up Prospect, and we hear them on Warren. Now I'm up here on Longview, and I can hear them over there on Knoxville. And the other night, we were sitting in the backyard, and here comes a couple motorcycles flying down Glen and Elm, and we just put a new stop sign on Francis, and I really, listening to them coming, I don't think they slowed down for anybody coming through those stop signs. But it's not just on Prospect, it's all over. You can really see where it happened on Warren Moore, because they come flying up off the bridge and everything, but anyhow, I have nothing else to say after that.
Thank you. Back to you, Trustee Weisenberg, then.
I live on Francis, Trustee Gett. I can assure you it has slowed things down. I didn't request the stop signs, but boy, they have slowed down the traffic. I don't think anyone would categorize Galena Road as a neighborhood, but there are neighborhoods that are off Galena Road. Terrace View, for example, has a very narrow road. I think last time I measured it was 20 feet, 23 feet, something like that. Vehicles can travel faster down Terrace View then they can travel down downtown Prospect. If that's not a problem, then I don't know what is. Enforcement is a separate issue. We should be firmly stating our standard in the village. There is no reason for anyone to exceed 20 miles an hour in our dense neighborhoods. If the speed limit, and that doesn't even account for the speed limits that aren't posted, that automatically default to 30. We've spoken about this before. I'm ready to move on this. Please, I ask my fellow board members, we need to take action on this. There's no reason why we shouldn't simplify our standard for our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Trustee Weisenberg, you just said that if there's not a sign posted, the default is 30. Is that state law?
Correct. That's a statutory limit from the state of Illinois. I looked that up on the Secretary of State's, or maybe it was the Illinois State Police website. One of the websites, it defaults to 30. So if it's not posted, they can legally go 30, which really means 35, 40. 1 out of 10 people survive when hit at 40. There's no reason for anyone to go faster than 20 miles an hour on our neighborhoods. I'm willing to negotiate on that, but I definitely don't think it should be 30. I definitely don't think it should be 35. It's got to be 20. I could live with 25, but it's got to be 20. And when someone's cutting through the village of Peoria Heights, either on Prospect or on Galena Road, and they turn into our neighborhood, there should be a flashy sign, not necessarily flashy, but something that says residential, slow down.
Yeah.
Because when people see speed limit signs, they all look the same. When they turn into one of our neighborhoods, it should catch their attention that they are in a residential neighborhood, just like when people put out those kids, little kids. I know the sheriff with Asbel has those little kids running around that say slow down. Something to catch their attention that says, hey, this isn't Peoria, you're cutting through our village, slow down. When we change the speed limit, which I hope each one of you will support, when we get the new speed limit signs, let's do the residential ones that really catch motorists' attention.
Do you think they should be lit with like a blinking light?
Not necessarily lit. One of those was neon. Neon. It doesn't have to be lit. Those are expensive. That's neon. A more economical one, just put a placard residential above our existing ones. Doesn't have to be expensive, just something out of the ordinary that catches their attention. When you go to a lot of neighborhoods in Peoria, the Knolls, there's one off Knoxville as you head towards OSF. On the right-hand side, when you turn into theirs, they got a big residential speed limit sign. I mean, this isn't rocket science. We can do this. I think it'll make a difference. And it'll be a good faith effort to our neighborhoods and our families that we're trying to slow down the speeders.
I would not be opposed to the 20 mile an hour as long as we can clarify what's residential and what's not.
These signs would be a great.
I mean, as far as enforcing it, yeah.
Right.
I think Trustee DeVore has some good points also. There are some north-south roads that really go a long distance without any stop signs. You know, one thing we did on Prospect is we added the stop sign here, Prospect to Marietta, and that did deter a lot of traffic. They started taking Knoxville instead of coming up Prospect. So I do think that will work as well. So, as we look at this, entirely, I think the signage or the speed limit is one approach. I think the stop signs are very important as well, because there are a handful of roads in the Heights that could use more stop signs. And this is pretty common. We've done this in the past. We can do, some short studies, traffic studies to see if it's warranted, and I'm sure the areas that at least I'm thinking of will be. And then we can throw those up. I think that will also be a deterrent as far as cut through traffic and also speed. So I think we need to identify, the top 5 that we want to do first, and move forward. So that'll take a little bit of time, but we could do nothing like the survey we did up on Glen Elm. This will be much shorter. So.
Okay. Quick question, following up to a question or a topic that Mr. I believe it's Ketter had. Could we put stop signs along Prospect? I mean, I live on Francis, which is off Glen Elm, and that's a racetrack. Anyone who lives on Glen Elm or knows about Glen Elm, they come out of that nursing home and they jet to Francis and cut to Knoxville, or they go straight down and hit Glen. That stop sign A lot of people still run it. A lot of people California roll it. But it really has slowed down traffic. If we could strategically put some stop signs along Prospect, I think it would be more effective than the speed bumps Peoria put up, because you can still hit those things at 30 miles an hour. But the stop signs, you really you should stop. But
Well, one thing I wanted to say, I don't mean to cut you off, but in response to your question, is that we do have a grant in right now, and we haven't heard, and the whole idea of the redoing of Prospect is a lane calming or traffic calming initiative. So it would be just a one north lane and one southbound lane there. So I realize that's not happening immediately, but I wanted to speak to your question about grants and traffic calming measures, and we are.
Well, and that was a very important part of that grant was public safety. So Trustee Kazam is right. And, going back to Galena Road, the $68.5 million, that's the reason we've been trying to get that done for years, because you know how many fatalities we have down there. And I think, once that's done, that's going to correct a lot of those issues. But again, that's not something that's going to be done overnight. I mean, they're in the pipeline. Things are being done behind the scenes. We have received the one grant. We're waiting to hear on the other. But I think some of the other stuff that we've discussed tonight, we could do, in-house more short-term that you've discussed, as far as the stop signs and the speed limit, so.
what would it take to just study the Prospect area if a stop sign would be appropriate? Is that something that we could start?
If I may interject, I think the chief has heard everyone here tonight. I think we all take this very seriously. So I'm going to ask him to think about, and I'm one that I just don't think lowering the speed limit is the only solution. I think it's a mix of things, of trying to cut through traffic, of additional stop signs, of lower speed limits. So if we could, I'm going to ask that we let Chief Sutton think about this and bring back a draft that we would all take a look at, and then hopefully at a following meeting that we would start approving some things. If this a neighborhood issue and a public safety issue, if both you and Trustee Wigginton would continue to work together on that and work with Chief Sutton, does that make sense?
Perfect.
Okay. So if we could, let's get into noise. A discussion of an amendment to the noise ordinance. Trustee Wigginton.
Okay, so again, I'm a facilitator of this, but I know that one thing that has come to our attention, and this is kind of a thing that we've been hitting on a lot lately, is a discussion on some of the ordinances that are in or not on the books, which was brought up to our attention earlier this evening when I talked about the parking of RVs. We've hit some other public safety ordinances as well, with the prohibiting those gas-powered bicycles here in the village as well. So one of the other ordinances that I think gets a lot of attention, and I think we've heard that tonight from both our residents from Scioto, thanks for coming out tonight, is this noise ordinance. So I'd like to just, again, open that up to discussion and see what we have to say.
Well, let's start with Chief Sutton and explain what he wanted to earlier and where we are at right now.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give a little bit of background on why we're at where we are today. Back when this ordinance was first drafted, it was 10 o'clock. That was 7 days a week, 10 o'clock. Shortly thereafter, some of the business owners approached the administration and asked for Friday and Saturday that to be at 11. And that was granted at that time. If I may interject, but that was granted, probably none of us were here at that time. This was a new.
Maybe you and Trustee Gett.
This was a new administration, and in fact, Trustee Gett was here. And at that time, that was granted, that Friday and Saturday they could have bands play till 11. So that was approved, we moved on. So recently, it was brought to my attention that our ordinance online still read 10 o'clock. It was brought to me by Trustee Weisenberg, and I said, well, I was here at that meeting when it was changed to 11. So doing some more research is that when we had Asavar come in and codify all of our ordinances, some of the ordinances were not brought over entirely, and that being one. So what I said to Trustee Weisenberg, Mayor Phelan advised him of this issue, that the police department needs to know either way. We need to have direction on what the issue, what is the deadline? Is it 10, is it 11? But we need to know. I was not aware that it wasn't codified until recently. That's why we're discussing it tonight. But I do remember when they came to the administration and asked for that extension for Friday and Saturdays, and that's the way we've been enforcing it. But since the ordinance was never officially changed, that's why I asked for it to be on the agenda, so we could actually give the police department direction. So I asked for you to discuss this, and we need to amend the ordinance either way, whether it be leave it as is or change it to 11, but we need some direction on what to enforce.
So when that was done, when the board made that decision, there were probably fewer bars here in the...
Yeah, there were only, I believe, a few, 2 or 3 that approached the board at that time about allowing it to go till 11, so.
Okay, anybody want to start? Go ahead.
I think it would have been like Oliver's and like that we had back then. We didn't have Four Brothers down here putting on a big concert every weekend. And
Yeah,
stuff, so.
Jeff, do you know what year that was done by chance?
No.
It was beginning of Four Brothers business, Jeff, so
Right,
that
but
was
it
one of them, yeah.
Because I remember we had complaints about Oliver's and and there was problems there, and we had problems with Pizza Works. And then this all just kind of, okay, let's make an exception for them on the weekends. I thought it was all taken care of. Of course, all I did was vote aye on it. So.
Well, and it's, and I hear, my windows don't rattle, but I hear it at night, and I don't know if it's just, the bars. I think people have wedding venues, maybe at I don't know, there's a country club, and they will have their receptions, and that echoes. They have a nice veranda out onto the hill there, and that echoes. You can hear that above and below the hill. And, so when you hear them say "I do," you know that they did it. Everyone in the village does. But I think that this is certainly something. I wasn't here when they did that. I guess not a lot of us were, but there certainly is a lot more bars and activities here in the Peoria Heights area now.
Also, we still had the music fest going on. So the music fest went until 11 o'clock, and I think that's probably was a big reasoning for us to go ahead and allow the businesses to do it, because we still had when the music fest would come in here for that weekend, and we go till 11 o'clock. So that was probably a good reason why we said, okay, let's go ahead and...
Okay, yeah, thank you, Trustee Gutton. That makes sense.
So, Chief Sutton, is it, when it was voted on, and Trustee Gett, is it 11 o'clock, 7 days a week?
No.
Fridays and Saturdays, okay. I guess speaking on behalf of the businesses and not to be of any disrespect to the people that came here tonight, I feel that 11 o'clock is a very reasonable time to have bands on the weekends, not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday through Wednesday, as long as that 11 o'clock is enforced. I think that I also hear the music at my house, and I don't live as close to the area that you're talking about or the specific business, but I actually find it very lively in the summer, and I think it entices a lot of residents to our area to live here and for recreational purposes, so I am for the 11 o'clock standard.
I'll go on the record to say I support the 10 o'clock. And I don't support that haphazardly. I went on several municipalities' websites: East Peoria, Dunlap, Chillicothe, Aurora, Bloomington, Peoria. They all end at 10. I was not able to find a single town that allowed loud music past 10 o'clock. So apparently a lot of people find it unreasonable, but If we allow music up until 11 o'clock in downtown Prospect, then we have to allow it for everyone in the village. We can't just say Jim here can play his band. We have to allow it on Glen. We have to allow it on Francis. We have to allow it on Miller. We have to allow it on Grandview. We have to allow it on Longshore, St. Jude, everywhere. I think we'd have a lot more people in this room if everyone's neighbors were jamming music until 11:30 at night. I'm pretty sure we all can agree that there'd be a lot more people here in this audience if everyone followed the same standard as Prospect. I doubt many residents would appreciate loud music being played at 11 o'clock at night at their house. So I think 10 o'clock is reasonable, and if it isn't reasonable, where are they going to go? No one else allows it. So I think 10 o'clock is reasonable. So I would like to see it at 10 o'clock.
Can I add?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I live 1 block west of where the residents that are there tonight are talking about, and I personally have no windows rattling in my house. I will say that if I sit on my back porch, I can hear the words of the music that's being played. But personally, I do not find it disruptive. I too enjoy it. My immediate neighbors that I have spoke to about this also haven't complained, but I haven't been up and down the block. I think it's, for me personally, I feel that it's reasonable to let the bands play till 11 just on Friday and Saturday and just through the warmer months of the year.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. That I just wanted to add that. I would be willing to be more diligent to listen to it, but it doesn't seem to affect my household. Not that that's not affecting someone else's, and I want to be very conscious of that and empathetic to people that are having problems. So I don't know if there's anything we can do with the way the speakers are being pointed or how that works, because it's just not my industry. But I'm not opposed to keeping it at 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday.
Well, that's a really good point too, because this summer, I can't remember, it's probably in July, I came down Glen and the music was blaring from a business along Prospect. And I went home and I could hear it very clearly, and I live pretty far away from there. But then they corrected it the next weekend. So they did something with the speakers, because I was out again and I was with my husband, and we drove all around through the neighborhoods. I could hear it loud and clear on Prospect, but as I drove through the neighborhoods behind, it wasn't that loud or disruptive at all. So I do think that that's part of it.
Anyone else that hasn't spoken?
Well, it could be a compromise if we have them lower the volume. I mean, I'm not sure how this board, where it's going on this, but if it does keep it at 11, maybe that, a compromise would be to have them lower the volume, so it isn't so loud down Prospect. I know they did try some rearranging of the speakers, and it did work, but I think it also depends on the type of band they have too. I think sometimes we get more complaints than others, but I do think if...
I think that presents a gray area. I think it either needs to be 10, 10:30, 11. I think we just need a time.
Chief, as far as making the village aware, if one of these bars or something has a band or some sort of performance, do they make the village aware of it? No. Okay. No. So the only thing that I could see, especially to address some of the concerns of Terry specifically, he said, sometimes they go 11:30, 12, 12:30. If we knew that where these things were happening, and then we show up 11:01 or 10:01 and say, hey, that was a minute ago. This show's supposed to be over.
It's almost trying to dictate our call load, though. So if we're on a domestic or an aggravated battery down at Walgreens parking lot, and we're not making 10:01, we're not making 11:01.
I hear you.
So it's hard to pinpoint that, but I do think we could be more cautious of, if they're going over the time limit, but, the mayor's exactly right. I mean, we need to figure out a solution so our officers have direction on how they want to enforce it. Is it 10 or is it 11? So.
Well, and I want to be sensitive to our residents and whatever the policy the board establishes, but I really don't want to put our police officers in the position of determining if music is too loud or not. It's either too late or it's not,
Right.
I agree with you, Mayor. If the cutoff time's 10:30, you're done. They just don't go to any encores, you're done. And that's simple as that. And if you think the song's going to take you over, don't play the song. Find something else. They can figure it out.
Have we tried to reach out to any of these businesses and have a good conversation with them, expressing?
I think that'll begin now.
Yeah.
I think that conversation will begin now, once the word gets out with the bar owners. We're looking at changing the time, so we can make them aware of that we're considering changing things, but I don't think they're aware of it at this point.
No, they're not.
That's not what I mean. I think that some of the main key bars that are having entertainment on the weekends are very strong supporters of our village, and they too are residents, and they care about the residents as well as we do. So I think if we had a conversation like, hey, you guys are kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit, we need to shut this down at the time. Like, it can't be 11:05, it can't be 11:15, like, you need to shut it down at 11. I think they would respond well to that, and then, or if we choose 10, whatever, and then start working on, like, okay, we warned you now 3 years in a row, like, because I know that we've had issues with them, we've gone a couple times and addressed it. Then moving forward, if we have to come back because you're still playing music at 20 after the time, we will be issuing a citation.
I think that's a good suggestion, that we get everyone that's involved part of the conversation. So I think that's a good start, Trustee DeVore.
We've had those conversations, Trustee DeVore, with the business owners, but like anything, and it's not trying to be disparaging to them, but it's short-lived. It's like traffic enforcement. Once we're there, they're fine. Once we pull off, it starts again. Same thing with this. We have a great relationship with the business owners, very good, proactive, and be honest with you, if my officers are getting called to this location 3-4 times, trust me, they're going to have a talk with the owner to say, look, this has to stop. We're not going to come here every night and address this. So those conversations have happened, and I've also talked to them, and they've been good at times. But like what we see a lot of the times is that they're busy running their business, and the band goes over.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you have police officers at the door saying, look what time it is. They're like, they should have been done by now. Well, it's up to them to police that, really. They're the ones booking the bands. They understand the local ordinances. But we will reach back out to them and explain to them kind of, what the temperature of this ordinance is right now and what the possible changes are going to be. So I will educate them from my end on what it's going to look like. But I would say right now, we need to get something addressed with the time, because our officers need to know what to enforce. So
to move this along to another meeting for continued discussion, I heard, at least for now, and people change their minds, I at least heard 2 trustees for 11. Trustee Gett, did I hear a time from you?
Well,
at least for tonight, just to.
I would say 10:30 if you want for a compromise. I'm hearing 10 and 11, but
Okay.
when I used to live down there, I could hear it. So,
Mr. Mayor, I would say strictly enforced 11 o'clock. Would I be in favor of?
On Friday, Saturday?
Yes, correct.
What about you, Trustee Wigginton?
Well, I'd say,
This is not a vote, just right now what your opinion might be.
Yeah, I would say we keep with the status quo, but we need to have this come before the board ASAP for, an ordinance.
All right, so I'm going to ask you, again, similar to speeding, that you've heard of the board, that you bring back a recommendation that we approve and codify once and for all on times, but we'll bring that back to committee on a draft, and then we'll send it to the full board for any changes. We'll make the business owners aware that the board's having this discussion. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Could I just add one? So the status quo, because it's the 11 p.m. is not codified, would be 10 p.m. right?
Right.
Okay. And I also want, as we proceed with this conversation, I also want to make sure we don't single out the business owners as the issue, because if the businesses can play loud music until 11 o'clock, anyone in the village of Peoria Heights can open their windows and just start jamming until 10 o'clock.
But that's not the issue here, though, Brandon.
No, I understand. The issue is the noise ordinance.
Right. People came here because they're hearing the windows rattling from the businesses that are here. That's the problem presented, and I think we need to address that. So
I agree. If we are speaking of a noise ordinance that just doesn't cover bands, it just doesn't cover the bars. So if we're going to make a change or suggest a change that's going to affect the entire village, the conversation should be focused around the entire village and the impact to the entire village. Because if we say the businesses can play music until 11 o'clock, when Miss Smith calls because her neighbor is outside having a pool party and they're jamming AC/DC at 10:30, there's nothing we're going to be able to do. So I do think it's important that we look at the whole picture, not just Prospect, so that we're not revisiting this issue when Miss Smith comes here and complains about her wild neighbor's pool parties.
Well, in theory, we could do it in B1.
Yes.
We could have a noise ordinance that's specific to the business district.
The council's not here, so I'm not sure how
Yeah,
that
that's
would
true.
apply.
Yeah, you could do that, trustee Kazam.
And then we wouldn't have that, I mean, that would take the issue that you're talking about off the table.
And we have a noise ordinance now.
Well, I think it can all be
Covers
part of the
everything.
conversation. You're all the policymakers. You can decide what it looks like when you get to the finished product.
Well, we do currently have a blanket noise ordinance that covers everything.
Yeah, I do, I was gonna say, Chief, because, I've been at people's houses where the department's been called to come and talk to us about it, and they couldn't hear anything, but it covers the entire village.
Yeah.
The noise ordinance, and there was just that little addendum for the 11 o'clock for the bands. So I thought we already had a noise ordinance that covered.
We do. Yes.
All right, well, thanks again for everyone for being here, and thanks for a good, lively discussion on this. We'll bring back some suggestions where we can finalize something. Anything else under public safety, Trustee Wigginton?
That's it for this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Any miscellaneous business coming before the board? I did have one item. I did receive a complaint from a person who had with them a wheelchair-bound person and had difficulty getting through the business district sidewalks. I immediately sent Superintendent Casey down to take a look at that. Mike, you encountered just a minor,
Just one.
and that business complied, and so
Talked to the gentleman and he moved stuff out of the way, so everything else is good to go.
thanks for taking care of that.
So one more thing, Chief, when you speak with council about the noise ordinance, if the noise can be heard outside of the business district, how does that apply to the broader issue? Because I agree, if we had a business district and it wasn't surrounded by neighborhoods, I could understand where a business district noise ordinance would make sense. But if the business district is inside or close to a residential, how does that work if the disturbances can be heard outside of business district 1?
All right, thank you. And if any of you have any additional additions or questions, please email Chief Sutton after the meeting or this week. All right, Trustee Gett,
Make a motion to adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second?
All right, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we're adjourned.